Hello guys, and welcome to another Witch Doctor build video for patch 2.2, and we kick things off with a build that is now the strongest in terms of solo greater rifts, and that is the poison dart build. I'd say there are only 3 builds that are now super viable at high greater rifts, and none of them are the Jade Harvester. This build has the highest fishing potential, meaning that if you spend a lot of time farming for good RNG and rifts, you will have the potential to climb higher than any other build, but it's not as consistent as say the SMK builds due to the amount of things that can go wrong if you get a bad rift. That said, it's still the top build if you're a serious solo Witch Doctor. So one of the main changes to the Witch Doctor that allows for this build to shine is the new Zuni 6-piece, which will allow your fetishes to do stupid amounts of damage to any target that you hit with a mana spender. Another thing that gives this build an advantage over the other builds are the new defensive changes to the set, which reduce that damage taken depending on how many fetishes you have active. So once we generate 23 fetishes, which to be fair is really easy now, we will effectively take 46% reduced damage, which if you combine with the unity ring on you and your follower, it is just a ridiculous amount of tankiness, which by the way is another advantage over say the Jerem SMK build, because with that build you are forced into using Tasker and Theos to be effective, where here you can use the Zuni gloves, freeing up a spot for the unity ring. Speaking of which, let's get to the gear. So the first item you will be needing is of course a Dagger of Darts. Ideally the stats you will want on this item are 10% damage, a main stat, and attack speed. Now as you can see, my dagger is not ancient and the damage is not that great at all, yet with this weapon and build I was able to climb to rank 29 on the leaderboards. You want to make sure you save any Ramaladni's gifts so you can roll the item to the exact stats that you need. The next item that you will need is the Carnevil helm, and you'll want that to roll a high main stat, vitality, and ideally crit chance. This helm combined with a Dagger of Darts will allow your fetishes to shoot a poison dart every time you do, as well as pierce through enemies. You will then want 5 pieces of Zuni, and they will all need to be gloves, chest, legs, boots, and a mojo. Now for the mojo, one of the new changes means it will always roll fetish army damage. Now fetish army damage does affect the build and it is a stat you want, however poison dart damage is just a superior stat, marginally, but it is. Because of this, you can leave the fetish army damage on the mojo like I have done here. If you want to roll something else to a priority stat, you can do so. The main stats you will want on a mojo are intellect, vitality, crit chance, and elite damage. So if you are missing one of those stats, just leave the fetish army damage on there. However, you will want to try and get poison dart damage on your legs and belt. Speaking of the belt, you will ideally want to go for a witching hour, as attack speed and raw damage are the key to this build. As you can see, it's all about spamming your darts, and the faster you do that, the faster the bad guys will die. For your boots, try and get all your defensive stats. On your gloves, you'll want crit damage, crit chance. For your chest, you'll want intellect, vit, 3 sockets, and fetish army damage. You'll also want fetish army damage on your shoulders, and for our shoulders we are using a 2-piece all kills with the braces for the extra defense and damage on elites. For the braces you will want poison damage, and yes, poison damage does affect your fetish's poison darts. It's pretty silly as ideally the fetishes would do whatever damage the fetish army itself is set to, but it doesn't, so you will want to be running a poison damage on your bracer. For your amulet, you will ideally have a Hellfire amulet that rolls correctly, but as we all know, that is close to impossible unless you're a lucky bastard. So I'm using a great Blackthorn's amulet with near double perfect rolls on the crit chance and the crit damage, as well as a socket, and also I got super lucky with the melee damage reduction, as it is exceptionally useful in ways that are not as obvious as it sounds. For rings, you will need a royal ring to tie the items together, and ideally you'll have max attack speed, critical hit damage or critical chance, and a socket. For your second ring, it's up to you personally. If you're going for 45 plus greater rifts, I would highly suggest a unity ring, as you will effectively be one shot by things like multi-jailers. But if you like to live life on the edge, the new convection of elements is a nice choice. For your gems then, you will want to take Enforcer. This will keep your pets alive, as well as adding a bit of damage output to them, followed by Simplicity Strength, which will increase the damage of your darts, and yes, it does carry over to your pet's darts as well. The little healing bonus that you get from it is also nice. Lastly, you'll want to pick a Gogok of Swiftness, as like I stated earlier, attack speed is one of the key stats to this build. For your abilities then, you'll of course be using Poison Dart, and I suggest for higher greater rifts you take Snake to the face, as you can pretty much stun lock any mob you like with it, which you'll realise is very important once you start facing mobs that can one-shot you from a distance. Next, and controversially, we are taking Haunt. Now, I'll just explain that most builds use Acid Rain with Piranado, and that's logical, sure, but one thing that people don't seem to take into consideration is the little things that make that viable. For example, as stated before, I don't have a Hellfire Amulet. That means I don't use Grave Injustice. The reason I don't use it, apart from the fact that I don't have a Hellfire Amulet, is because it's a ranged build that we're playing. Everything we do practically is from range. What people seem to forget with Grave Injustice is it only works when enemies die within around 20 yards of you. You're not supposed to be within 20 yards of enemies with this build, okay? It's a ranged build, and GI is not going to help you as much as, say, Gruesome Feast, which will effectively double your DPS. So because of this, we are taking Haunt. Spamming this on enemies before you engage will not only trigger the Zuni 6-piece, but it will also give you a nice 20% damage amp, which comes in great on bosses, etc. We are also not taking Piranado due to the fact we have very little cooldown reduction, and we are instead taking Zombie Piranhas. This ability will allow you to spam pools much more frequently, and the pool has a ranged effect. For example, the piranhas will leap out of the pool, hitting nearby enemies, and each time they do this, they are triggering the Zuni 6-piece. So it's a really great ability to have. Combined with Haunt, these two abilities are giving you a massive combination of damage amplification. You'll then want to take Spirit Walk with John, the Big Bad Voodoo, Slam Dance, and of course Fetish Army. And you'll want to take a Legion of Daggers for the extra fetish, as the fetishes are affected by your poison damage already. Tips on how to play the build. I guess the most important thing you'll need to remember is you need to try and keep your fetishes with you at all times, which sounds pretty simple, but it can become a problem on maps that are not open. Lots of hallways and corridors and rooms, etc. Pets can get left behind as they target smaller trash mobs that you decide to skip, and they will also, you know, stand and cast darts when you do, meaning that if they are trapped in a room or behind a wall, they won't be hitting anything as you try to attack the mob whilst ahead of them. So try to clear all the little trash mobs you run past, and in some cases it might be easier to just Spirit Walk deep into the danger zone and then run back out to spawn your fetishes next to you. It might even be necessary to just recast them completely. I'd say the best technique when moving from pack to pack and trying to navigate your fetishes is just to spam Haunt until your fetishes get into a good position, and then continue to fire as normal. This will allow you to also get a nice set of debuffs going before you engage, you know, with the damage amp from Haunt and stuff. I think that's everything, guys. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and there will be more videos coming out over the next week or so covering the SMK pet builds, and maybe I'll do a new Jade Harvester video as well. Alright then, guys, until next time, take care.